ever have a question about your cunt that you were too embarrassed to pose? Like, if I don't have sex for the next 8 years, will my pussy hole close? Well, buckle up, school's in session. These sex pros have planned a lesson, 'cause cunts aren't just for reproduction. Whether you were born with it or it's under construction, open your ears, 'cause the Clam Jam's got you covered. The Clam Jam.
Okay. We did it!
Yay!
Oh man, this has been a real Mercury retrograde of an experience.
Of a day.
So here we are finally. Those of you viewing live, thanks for your patience. I'm Vienna, I'm the Cuntsultant, and this is our honored guest, Karly Nuttall.
Hello.
Licensed professional midwife.
Yes. That's it in a nutshell.
So many things. So this is our inaugural episode. I hope to God this is recorded and you'll find out in the future. We don't know currently at this moment. So, sorry for the delays. Again, figuring this out. This is live. People are seeing this later. Won't care. But here we are doing the Clam Jam. So today's topic, every week or every 2 weeks rather, we'll have something else to talk about with some other fabulous vagina professional in some way.
Who will be here in my seat.
We'll be here in Karly's seat. Karly is a wealth of information, and we'll get into all of that in just a moment. But just a real quick thing, the fabulous theme song was done by Eileen Hanley. She's incredible. I definitely recommend checking out her work. But without further ado, because we're making it up as we go, Karly Nuttall, and we're here to talk not about her midwifery, not about her accomplished career as a midwife of over 20 years, not about her fabulous podcast, The Birth Queens, not about anything to do with any of that, but it does play a role. We will be discussing Karly's sexual debut as a 30-something. So sexual debut, of course, is a better term for losing your virginity, because virginity is a construct, and we are trying to get away from that. So sexual debut, way more exciting, way more fun. That's the term we're using. And so people, tend to have their first sexual experiences at a variety of ages. We are less likely to hear stories, I think, about people having it in their 30s, and often when we do have that story, it's like the 40-year-old virgin, which is awkward, and just a person who is socially inept, and that is not today's story.
But
look at this lady. Look at her.
It is rife with complexity and interest and intrigue.
Yeah, so we'll be talking about religion, sexuality, hot younger men, all these
Super
things.
hot younger men.
All of this comes up today in our very first conversation. Also, I have a dog. I tried to lock him out. He will play a role in this.
He will always make his presence known.
Enjoy. So, Karly, I would love it if you would just give us a little bit more of your background and just how you came to be the person you are today, and then let's dive into your history.
Well, most of the pertinent things, I think, are that I grew up very Mormon. My family is I don't know how many generations back, but I had some relatives that migrated with the pioneers over the plains from wherever it was in the Midwest to Utah. So Mormon stock, serious Mormon stock. And then I decided to become a midwife when I was just a sweet young thing. I was 17 years old, and I was this is going to be my future. So those two things really come together to make this story today what it is. Is there anything else you'd love to know?
No, just starting there. And then, so you started midwifery at the age of 19, really young one. You knew exactly what you want to do. You want to get out there and catch some babies.
Yep.
So that gives you this background. So throughout your life, you're doing your things in your daily life, but in your professional life, you're really into vaginas in a big way, because you're all up in them.
Literally body parts, my hand of people's vaginas.
All the things. So that part of it then informs, I guess, this other, your personal and professional crossover. But we're starting there with your Mormon background. So yeah, if you want to talk more about what that meant to you in terms of your sexuality.
Okay, I would love to talk.
I
I'm
know.
sure that there are a lot of other people out there that can relate. But in Mormonism, like many, I think that all evangelical Christians and a lot of Jewish faith and like Muslim, I mean, many religions believe in waiting until you're married to have sex. And Mormons add in a fun little tidbit of that they believe that premarital sex is actually the sin next to murder. It goes like premarital sex and then murder.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's not like, I maybe stabbed someone in the chest with like a screwdriver. No, like that's down here because you didn't actually kill the person. Premarital sex is up here.
Oof.
Yeah, aggravated assault down here. Consensual premarital sex next to murder.
Where does rape fall on that scale?
You know what? That one is it was confusing for church leaders. I did ask about that because I was like, when you bring up the whole chastity talk, which a little sneak peek into the life of a Mormon single person. If you are active in church and you're going to church, then every 6 months, if you're single, they're going to do what's called the chastity talk. And they actually have somebody in the class, and they split it up so it's like, men have the chastity talk, women have the chastity talk. Everything about this experience is very infantilizing and very juvenile, but somebody gives a lesson about how sex is, in fact, the sin next to murder until you get married, and then you flip a switch, and suddenly a blowjob goes from being like this horrible thing that could land you in hell to suddenly it's like this act of charity that you're obligated to. I mean, maybe not.
Ooh.
Like it used to be that oral was not moral, and I guess now like the church is always changing their stance on things. But
that must be a real mindfuck to go from like. I've heard this, I think, from other people where it's like you spend your whole entire like nascent years, your impressionable years being told sex will send you to hell, and then you get married and there's like no real education up to that point, but all of a sudden it's like, now do it all the time and be happy about it.
And you're supposed to feel good about it after you've spent all this time thinking, it's bad, I shouldn't think about it, I shouldn't do it. Fortunately, that wasn't my experience. I was gifted with a conscience that doesn't experience a lot of guilt, much to my mother's dismay. She's very much like a Catholic woman in that she thrives on guilt. It is the fuel that feeds her fire.
I mean, guilt and religion, I feel like, are
they're best friends.
They're best friends.
The best of friends.
They're married. They've been together for so many years, and they
love each other so much. Yeah, so that was what it was like growing up Mormon. Like you're very much taught that as a woman, if you have sex or you have, any kind of sexual encounter before you're married, that you're like damaged goods. They always use the example of a flower. Like I don't know if you've seen Jane the Virgin, but she talks about like crumpling up her gardenia or whatever it is, and like nobody wants it now. So
virginity is rough, man.
Instead of seeing it as like, wow, now you're more experienced and you might know how to like have a good time, help others involved in your sexual experience have a good time. Like that's not how it's looked upon. It's like you're damaged goods unless you saved yourself for a marriage.
It's so rough. So I mean, with that that obviously I think creates a whole host of feelings for people and neuroses potentially, and
sexual dysfunction. There are a lot of people that I know, and this fortunately wasn't my experience. I'm not totally sure how I got so lucky, but there were a lot of people that I knew, like as I was leaving in the church, there were some people that were like my age, maybe even older, that couldn't have an orgasm with another person. Like they could by themselves, but they would have this talk with whoever their partner was and just be like, look, I'm having a great time. I'm not going to be able to have an orgasm with you. Which is such a bummer.
Such a bummer. It's a real bummer.
I mean, I've just rarely heard such sad words in my life.
Yeah, and it's the saddest part is that it seems like it's thoroughly preventable, right? It's like this indoctrination you get, and everyone is entitled to their religious beliefs. Truly, I believe that. But at the same time, those things do cause all kinds of ripple effects.
So many.
And being consultants over here who want everyone to have the best experience possible with their vaginas, that's a real bummer, because there's probably a way in which, I don't know, I mean, I feel like myself being also not in the same way that you were raised, but also raised around some fundamentalist Christians, I remember being like 11 or something and having this conversation with these friends of ours who were very fundamentalist, being like, it's good they don't teach us about sex because we'd want to do it if they told us. And that was what they told us.
There, sure.
And also I was like, you're probably right, quite honestly. And at that time I was like, sex is not something I should be doing, but it's very intriguing. I've always been very intrigued.
Clearly. Look at who we grew up to be.
Oh my God, guys! Like this is a cautionary. We're a real cautionary tale for repressive sexual.
I mean, I did everything right for a very long time.
Much better than
very, very long time, and I still ended up as a cautionary tale. So I don't know what to tell you.
Is that a badge we can get? Can we get badges like cautionary tale?
Yeah,
we're having a great time. Yeah, I like to call myself a Sunday school nightmare.
Yeah,
that's
you 100% are.
Sunday school nightmare.
100%. Oh my gosh, I forgot a really important detail. In the Mormon Church, masturbation is seen the same as. It's not quite as bad as having sex with another person, but that's also something you're not supposed to do. And I forgot another really fun layer to this. Okay. So the Mormon Church loves outward displays. They love having physical, tangible things that they can see to check to make sure you're doing everything you're supposed to. Number one, sacrament. So I'm sure most people are familiar with like sacrament, communion. It's basically the same thing. So it's something that you're supposed to do every week. And if you do it in a worthy way, and if you do it with the right intention, then it's like your sins are forgiven every week in church. Okay. So if you do something but blatantly that you're not supposed to do, you're not supposed to take the sacrament. So like if you have sex and then also like if you have any kind of sexual experience, interaction outside of marriage, you're supposed to tell your bishop, who is someone, just like a random man in your ward, like not like a psychologist, qualified counselor, just some guy where they're like, he's called of God. And it just so happens that there's a new one every 3 to 5 years and they all come from your same congregation. But you know what? Like they're all called of God. And so you have to tell him your sins and he tells you whether or not you continue taking the sacrament or not. Also, if you're wearing garments, if you've gone through the temple, I'm sure everyone's heard of magical underwear. If you've gone through the temple, you're supposed to wear your magical underwear basically at all times, unless you're swimming or having sex, which, as a single person, you're not supposed to be doing that anyway.
All the time.
Yeah, and I'm sure that many people have noticed Mormons' garments. You can see them usually hanging out of their collar. You can see a line in their jeans. If they're wearing shorts and they cross their legs, you can actually like see up their shorts and see their garments. So I'm sure that a lot of people have encountered there's a lot of curiosity around garments, and I understand why. But that's something that you're not supposed to wear if you're doing really bad things, because then you're not worthy to go to the temple.
Whoa.
And so there are all of these ways that people might know or just suspect, if you're in a singles ward and you're not wearing your garments, you're not taking the sacrament, people are just going to suspect either you're drinking alcohol or you're having sex. Automatically.
That's so fucked. Like, you can't even...
so fucked.
Like, again, religion, super complicated, and all kinds of ways to make you feel bad and have people judge you. It's basically just, like, the most judgmental. Like, it's how come... we don't have to have a whole conversation about religion. I find religion to be very fascinating, also deeply problematic, and I'm mad at it most of the time.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, but can you define what a ward is? You like singles ward?
Oh, sorry, it's a congregation. So I think most people just say congregation. But yeah, it's just like a group of people that meets in, a particular building, or maybe it's a particular time, because sometimes an area is big enough that there's one church building. But because they are efficient, they just stagger the different congregations that come in throughout the day. So there's usually like 3 wards that will meet in one building if it's a large enough area.
Got it.
If there are enough Mormons.
Good to know. Mormon trivia. Okay, so that's your backstory. You're raised super Mormon in a large family, and you continued on this path. And so you start a Mormon, you continue as a Mormon through your young adulthood.
Yes. So
what is that like as you start to become a midwife and you start to learn more about like the human body and engaging with people in the sexual? It's there's a lot of evidence or theory to be said, like pregnancy and birth is part of the sexual act, right? It's the culmination of a sexual act. I need to kill the dog. Hold on 1 second. I will be right back. This is it.
Should I answer right now, or am I just gonna wait?
Do you want to wait?
I'm gonna wait until you get back.
Sorry. Where did okay, you have to go out. You have to go somewhere else.
Or I told it was a bad dog.
Yeah, he can't help it.
He's a bad doggy.
You're living in here now.
Poor Toto. Poor. He's so nutty.
Hopefully that's better. And we will edit this. Okay.
Like you do, like you do.
All right, we're back. We're back. All right. So,
What was the question you asked?
let's back it up. So, starting over. So, okay. So you're raised Mormon.
Yes.
You come from a very large Mormon family. Lots of Mormonism happening, and then you you continue to be a Mormon from childhood through your early adulthood, and then eventually you're no longer a Mormon. So we'll get to that part.
Yeah.
But as you then decide to make the decision to become a midwife, and you start to engage with people's bodies and see people at this very vulnerable place that is the culmination of a sex act. Obviously, like, birth has a sexual aspect to it. How does that start to change your perception of the world and the perception of yourself? Does it? Or does it just become, I guess where's the question there? So it has to do with, like, how does that change your perception? And then also, does that impact the way that you view your body in relation to sex as an entity?
No, it didn't really change the way that I viewed my body, and I basically just became the virgin sexpert. I mean, my clients would talk to me about sex a lot, and I knew a lot. I knew a lot about STDs. I knew a lot about vaginal health. I learned more and more and more and more all the time. So it was just kind of an awkward place to be in, where I knew all this stuff about sex and I could answer all these questions about sex, and yet I wasn't having sex.
Yeah. And so did it feel awkward to you? Was this something
Incredibly.
Did it feel, so generally speaking, we don't go around telling, people like, hey, this is my status when it comes to sex. But were all your clients Mormon?
Oh, no.
No.
Definitely not. I finished school. I did go to school in Utah. I didn't go to BYU. Like, that's kind of the famous Mormon college. But I went to the Midwives College of Utah, mostly because I grew up in Oregon, and they have a midwifery school there, but you weren't allowed to enroll until you were 21. Mm-hmm. And so I had already decided I was going to be a midwife. I was 19. I was like, why wait 2 years? It doesn't make sense. And the only other school that I knew of was in Utah, and I had some relatives because, like I said, Mormon pioneer stock. So I went there, but then shortly after I graduated, I moved to San Diego, and I did have a few Mormon clients here and there, but mostly I started working at the birth center, and I was working with other midwives, and even the people that hired me, like I had lesbian clients and all of that. So I had a variety.
Did you ever feel like any tension around that? I mean, besides the fact that it was awkward, but serving like a variety of clients, serving people talking about things that maybe weren't like directly related to birth, specifically like birth adjacent, of course, STDs play a role. Did you ever feel like tension with your faith in those specific parts?
No.
Okay. Yeah, great. Just curious.
Great question, but
yeah. See, this is what we'll find with Karly, is there's a lot of tension that other people might experience, but not her. All right, so all that being said, what then led you to eventually no longer being Mormon, spoiler, and the much anticipated story of your sexual debut?
I mean, it was just a gradual breakdown of faith. I think that it started maybe in a similar way, maybe a dissimilar way than a lot of people that start to realize that they don't actually agree or find any kind of validation in their real life for the things that they believe or that they say they believe. And so it started like that, for sure. And, probably when I was 26, but because my family is so invested in the church and it's such a big deal to them. And honestly, just still being at church going was a big influence. I didn't feel like I had true separation and autonomy over the way that I thought until I completely left. Until I was no longer going to church, like as long as I was there, I was like, well, maybe there's something that I'm going to keep here. And as soon as I left, I was like, no, thank you. It's all gone. It's all garbage.
Got it. Yeah. I mean, it's a pretty radical shift. Like you went from not only like losing or deciding to leave rather, faith, you also left a community.
Mm-hmm. It wasn't hard to leave the community because the culture of Mormonism is part of why I didn't even miss going.
Oh, okay.
There's some people that I'm still friends with, but overall, especially as a single person, like I said before, the culture is very infantilizing. It's very juvenile, and you're not really thought of as a whole person almost until you get married and have kids.
Well,
it's like it's not like you're not a whole person, but they see you as a person who's in limbo, and they kind of treated you or I felt like they treated me as someone who was like not quite useful enough in society, not quite contributing enough in society, not seen as a full adult because I wasn't married. And it was kind of a weird place to be. Like I always felt weird being on the receiving end of that. I was like, you guys know what I do for a job. Like I'm contributing to society. Like I'm educated, I'm helpful, it's just a bizarre way to be treated. And so I didn't ever find a lot of guys that I wanted to date that were Mormon because at its core, it's very like misogynist and racist. And so it breeds a bunch of entitled men. Like there's some really good, really sweet men, of course, but there are also a lot of very entitled, juvenile people that have never been asked to emotionally mature. So it was really easy to leave in that way. And as soon as I left, I was really looking forward to like eliminating anything like unto virginity. I was like, I got to get rid of this ASAP.
Right. Yes, absolutely. So with that, I guess like I'm curious about your dating. You said you just gave some hot takes on the people you seem like you're interacting with. But so what was dating like through that last, in your 20s or wherever you started dating?
Yeah.
Through like towards the end.
Gosh, it was kind of painful to be honest. I don't know if I've ever told you this, Vienna. This might be a reveal for everyone. But I was dating this guy. I was living here, and it was kind of my last attempt at dating a Mormon guy. And he was a few years older than me. He was 8 years older than me, and we were dating long distance. So he would come out every once in a while because I think he was actually out in San Diego quite a bit before that, anyway, for work and because he had friends out there. But we were dating, and when you're Mormon, like all you can do is make out. And to me, it's like I can't imagine because like I like sex so much. It's like, why would I make out and then not have sex? But the Mormons make out sometimes for hours. I, as a Mormon, sometimes made out with somebody for 6 hours and came back with beard burn on my face, like the end of my nose all rubbed off. It was really painful. So this guy that I was dating, he would like try to dry hump me until he came, and I was just like, you like, oh my gosh. And he would do that, and he did it once, and I was just like, okay, that is so rude. Like, where is your sexual
and
etiquette?
He came in his pants.
He came in his pants. Wow. And I was like, I can't believe that like you would do that without even thinking about doing something for me. Like, you're not even touching my boobs, taking my shirt off, like nothing is happening.
I'm not dry humping you.
No, like nothing exciting is happening in my body, and you had a full-on orgasm. And he was like, well, so like this is another thing in like Mormon land where there's a lot of mental gymnastics to be like, well, this thing that I really wanted to do is actually okay. And he was like, well, if I touch your boob, that's intentional, but if I just have an orgasm, I just have an orgasm. I'm like, no, you worked for that, but you won't do anything for me. Like, that's all this is. I was like, you do that again, I'm dumping you.
Ugh.
And
so
he did it again, and I was like, that's it.
That's awful.
I'm so done with you. Because how rude.
So rude. Like, the most rude.
The most rude. Like, how rude. Yeah.
Awful.
Like, unbelievable.
All right.
Continue to YouTube.
I'm just checking in some stuff, guys. It's a whole mess over here.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So rude. Rude men who would come in and come on your leg in their pants, but would refuse to do anything on your behalf because
refuse to do anything pleasurable for me.
Okay, so real quick, I just want to get on the record: is soaking a thing or not?
Not in my world.
Do you know
I also dated somebody right before him who wasn't even active in the church, but because I was active in the church kind of at the time and I hadn't had sex yet, he also refused to have sex with me. It's like Mormon guilt.
Yeah.
Mormon guilt. Yeah, and I've heard that the men actually are guilted more about it even than the women.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that they might be punished harsher too because they're told that they have the priesthood, which is the power to act in God's name, if anyone was curious. And so with that comes a huge responsibility to, be an upstanding member of the church and respect women in the way, just don't have sex with women. It's really all the thing. Yeah, so that was my experience. Like, I was ready to have sex, but nobody would have sex with me.
So sad.
I know.
I'm so sad about that. So let's talk about that experience. But first, I am like super concerned this is not recording, and I keep thinking about it. And again, this is like the world's most janky situation.
Carrie Lou, I hope you're having fun watching that.
If she's watching. Okay, let's see here. Oh.
Does it actually have the capability to
It
record?
does. Mm-hmm.
It's weird that it's not obvious where you would start and stop recording.
This could be my fault. Because guys, Mercury retrograde. And first time using new software.
Why would we do such a thing?
Okay. There's our delay. Oh. Here we are. Okay, so this is us being live. I really feel like it's not recording.
Do you want to just do it on
we're gonna try it,
like
yeah.
Zoom?
No, we're gonna do this. Here we are back in the stream, trying some new things. Fun times, so fun. Fun for the whole family. Now we're going to record over here.
Oh. Okay.
All right, so let's see what the fuck happens, guys. All right, so back at it. So
Here we
Karly has had this experience of dating, we're going to say real shitty men who come in their pants and do nothing for her.
Sexually indecent.
She's sexually indecent.
Zero etiquette.
She's left the church and she is ready to party. But you're like in your early 30s, right?
Yeah.
You've never had any kind of sex, or maybe like oral sex,
yeah,
but not penetrative sex.
Mm-mm.
Not anal sex, because I also heard that's the thing that Mormons do to get away
It
with
is. It is. I didn't because I was a really good Mormon girl until I wasn't, and then it's just like, who cares about any of this?
Yeah, just like jump right into it.
Yeah.
So then you exit the religious world and you come into the secular world, and you're going to start dating secular
That's how
people.
you know that Vienna is also grew up religious. So anyone who calls it the secular world,
where the heathens are, she comes to the heathens. Yeah, like I was also, I think everyone always viewed me as a heathen girl because like I was not a fundamentalist Christian when I was at a fundamentalist Christian school. Also, I would like bring in manga with tits in it. Like I got in trouble for that one time.
That's so indecent.
I got in trouble for saying "bite me" a lot, which is something I was into in 8th grade. And my teacher had to be like, "You know that like means oral sex, right?" And I was like, "I don't care, but okay." I was also a very good kid, so I stopped. And then there was this one time we all got in trouble in 6th grade for playing Truth or Dare behind like the shed, and our teacher caught us. And our Truth or Dare was just like, feel her up, or like it was all just like moderate, tame. Yeah, but like also incredibly scandalous because we're all like 6th graders at a Seventh-day Adventist school,
right? And
people are like, our teachers like gave us a whole talking to, and we're like, okay, but we're all super horny, so what are we supposed to do out here? Fun times.
Horny and bored.
What else are you gonna do at recess? Quite honestly. So again, we've been the same people the whole time. So you're coming out, and again, like having, obviously, as most of us know, like having the conversation with someone. So like, by the way, I'm 34 and I've never had sex. I'm a virgin. Cool. Generally on a dating profile, I would imagine that doesn't go over super hot, although there are some people who are very into that, and we're not shaming anybody, but just knowing like culturally, it's a challenge to overcome. So yeah, what happened? How did you get, like, well, tell us this part.
I mean, I had watched a friend of mine who was, I think she's 2 or 3 years older than me, and she had been doing a lot of online dating, and she would usually get to the 3rd date, and she would tell these guys that she was a virgin, never hear from them again. And so I was like, I can't let that happen.
Also not cool. Also, like, I get, like...
Yeah, not cool.
Yeah.
Not cool, but also, I was like, if that's the reaction I'm going to get, I am not going to tell anyone. Like, no one will know that I'm a virgin. And because and I wasn't even thinking of myself as a virgin. I was just thinking, like, it's embarrassing that I haven't had sex yet. And I feel like as a 30-something-year-old, I don't really know what the norm is for sex. Like, I was kind of envisioning, I mean, Mormons put these ideas in your head too, but that I just kind of imagined that as people got older, they got like bored with the sex that they were having and would just want like kinkier, crazier things. And so maybe by the time everyone was my age, you know, like early 30s, that they were just like, if you're not putting a hot curling iron up my asshole, I don't want it. And so there was a little bit of terror. Okay, there was a little bit of terror.
I love it that there's a scale. It goes from like, if you have sex at 20, you're doing missionary, and then like you're doing hand jobs, and then like maybe you do some light bondage, and then anal, and then like, I don't know what the scale is.
Well, I was just imagining full-blown S&M. I was just like, everyone's got to be bored. Everyone's got to be bored, right?
Hot curling rod up the ass.
I mean, it's terrible, but really that was kind of what was in my mind. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like, how am I going to navigate this very unknown territory while also not revealing that I've never had sex?
What if I don't like hot curling rods up the ass?
What about consent? You know, there's all these confusing and terrifying things happening all at the same time. And lo and behold, I met the perfect person to start having sex with.
Ooh.
Yes.
All right.
So I was going on a trip to Peru with my friend Karen, and we were in the LA airport, and we were sitting in our terminal waiting to leave, and this very hot, turns out to be very young man, he was 11 years younger than me, and I mean, I don't know how young I look now, but like in my early 30s, I definitely look like mid-20s.
I think it's quite shocking to people that you are
41
and also have been a midwife for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
It's quite shocking looking at her face.
I mean, you can't see the wrinkles right now because this light.
She doesn't have any.
I do. I totally do. But anyway, I saw him walking by, and I was like, that guy is so cute. And he was making eyes at me, and he came down, and he sat next to me, and we started talking, and he gave me his card.
Incredible. It's an airport meet. That's amazing.
Yeah, an airport meet that really turned into
like, cute.
We're still friends. We're still friends.
It's incredible.
Yeah, like we hit each other up when we're single. Like, what are you doing?
I love it.
Yeah. So the things that made him perfect were that he was young. So I figured, like, in my mind, I was like, oh, he hasn't had tons of experience.
He's still on missionary.
And hand jobs and things that I might be able to do might please him. Like, this is good. This is very good. Second of all, he was actually SDA too, Seventh-day Adventist. And so he believed in waiting until marriage to have sex, although he had sex. And I can't remember how I knew, but I was like, this guy's had sex and he's going to give me some sex too.
Yeah, I don't think it's like a sin the same as murder from what I remember, but it was not a thing that they wanted you to do.
Right.
But I don't think it was the same thing as murder.
No, I mean, according to him, it was just like, well, we're not supposed to, but, you know, he would go like back and forth, and sometimes like, well, I'm being celibate now. Snooze fest. But anyway, lucky for me at this point in time, he met all my requirements. So I still didn't want him to know that I'd never had sex, as I said before, like, in my
But wait, so you're like, you had a checklist of like the people that would meet the criteria for cashing that V card.
I didn't. I was just so desperate to like just get it over with. Just have a dick out
Anybody,
there.
come on.
Please.
Hello.
I'm here with my legs open, waiting for something to fall in there. And so anyway, we exchanged information. He went to an island. I won't reveal his name or his island because, you know, he might not want people to hear the story. I don't know
Went to an island.
Went to the island from whence he came. And I went to Peru, and we kept in touch via email, and he lived not too far away. He was like an hour and a half from where I lived. And so we were like in touch, and, you know, one thing led to another, like, oh, come up to LA, like, listen to my band play. And as soon as I saw him again in person, because I've done a fair amount of internet stalking, and I was like, maybe he's not as cute as I remember. And then when I saw him in person, I was like, oh no, he was every bit as cute as I remember. Yeah, I was like, yes, this is happening. So we arranged a more private meeting later. Well, actually, I should say first, I was 34 or 35 at this time, which was a big reveal. This is very embarrassing for me, everybody. And I knew that he was young, but I didn't know how young, because he was still in college. And I was like, I can't be this unscrupulous. And so we were sitting backstage and like just chatting it up, and I casually somehow like dropped in there that I was 34, 35, and I saw his face, and he just looked down so as to try to not reveal the face that he was making, but I saw the face he was making, and it was like, oh shit, I had no idea that was the face he was making. And he didn't say anything, so I knew that he didn't care that I was a lot older than him, and I knew that I was a lot older than him.
Which is like good. Yeah. Good. You're like, the calculation.
We're
but also,
still on.
Yeah.
But I wanted to make sure he was like over 18.
So just checking.
I need even over. I mean, 21.
Making sure this is legal.
Yeah, making sure it was legal. I think he was 23. Yeah, he must have been 23. So anyway, we arranged a more private meeting, and I was like, you know, he's a pretty good church boy. I don't think we're going to have sex the first time, but I wanted to be prepared because I didn't want to have the virgin talk. I didn't want to go anywhere near that subject. And so I was like, I'm a midwife. I know things. I'm going to get a set of vaginal dilators, and I'm just going to like make it impossible to tell that I've never had sex before.
This is the hottest, best tip because again, using all your resources, knowing things about vaginas, knowing how to make a vagina like a little bit more elastic and like stretched, not stretched out in like the way that people think of it, but just like allowing it to understand its capability of elasticity.
Yes.
And you, again, are one of the most practical people I know.
Super practical.
And I just love that. That's where you're at. You're like, how do I destroy the evidence?
How do I hide the truth? And so, yeah, like I ordered them, and I started working on the different sizes.
Yeah.
And I think I'd gotten up to like this size, which wasn't very big. It was progress, but it wasn't very big.
And just to say, like, dilators are cylindrical things that they're not dildos.
They're not dildos. They're made out of like a hard plastic, and I mean, you could absolutely use it as a dildo, but
they're designed specifically to stretch the vagina for a variety of reasons, like in cases exactly like this, and then also
vaginismus,
different things where you need to encourage the vagina to be more elastic. If you have a neo vagina, if you had bottom surgery as like male to female trans person, you want to encourage elasticity of your neo vagina. So lots of things, lots of reasons.
Yeah, and if you haven't had sex yet, why not do it? Like, if you're thinking of having sex soon, because it could be really, really, really unpleasant. And most people that I talk to, like, when they first had sex, it was really painful and unpleasant. They didn't like it. And so, I mean, I was kind of happy to, like, skip over that part too. It's like,
right.
Okay.
I mean, good. It's like that prep. Like, prep.
Yeah. So he came to visit me, and again, I'd only gotten to, like, this size dilator maybe, which was grossly inadequate. He was very well endowed. And anyway, we started making out, and I was thinking the whole time, like, I mean, is this like a Mormon makeout thing? We just make out? Are we taking clothes off? What's happening? And 8 hours later, it turned into a Mormon makeout because he was like, well, he's like, why don't we try having sex? And I was just like, I haven't had sex in a while. It's kind of like,
is that what you said?
I think, no. I think I told him, I was like, I'm really small. Okay. And he was like, well, be really gentle. Like, let's just try. And I'm like, of course I wanted to, but like, he took off his pants and I was just like, that's not going to work. That's a very big penis. And that is not going to work because I remembered how difficult it was to get like this guy in there. And he was like, this guy. And I was like, no, that's just not going to happen. But
it does bring to mind, park that Big Mac truck right in this tiny garage.
yeah, there's no better description for it.
Thank you, Cardi B.
Thank you so much for explaining my life. So, I mean, things got funny because I was like, sure, we were having a great time, like great chemistry, so cute. And so he had actually come kind of prepared. Like, he had brought condoms. And so he like puts a condom on completely the wrong size. He brought like regular Trojans, and I'm like, does this guy not know what size condoms he wears? Because clearly he needs a magnet. Like, here I am, like the virgin sexpert, being like, something about this doesn't look right, as the end of it is strangulating like halfway down his penis. So it's like, that does not look comfortable.
Which is also kind of hilarious. Like, eventually going into the situation, it's like, you are the sexually inexperienced one, you are the virgin, you're like, I could tell you, like, I could solve all these situations for you, I know all the things, I just haven't had all the experience.
Right. Yeah, it was just kind of laughable, but it made me feel more comfortable too, because I'm like, obviously this guy's not like super experienced, so he doesn't need hot.
I mean, the first he has the face of like, this is still on, and then he has the condoms that says like, this is still on, but like also more complicated.
Yeah. Well, it became more complicated because we tried having sex, and after many minutes, I mean, who knows, it could have been an hour or two, he was just like, okay, why didn't you tell me you're a virgin? And I was like, and he's like, oh shit, you are? Because he was just joking. He was like, I was just joking. And I was like, oh yeah, me too. So we're just like dying laughing because I'm like, he's sore because he's got condoms that are like suffocating his dick.
My God.
And then I'm sore because he's just like trying to fit something way too big into this like, it's like trying to fit into a straw. Like, it's just not gonna work. So I was like, well, I got these vaginal dilators because I'm also sometimes like word vomit. And
you're like, let me tell you, I wasn't going to mention any of this, but now that we're here, let me show you all the things I have done.
So it just turned into this hilarious tell-all. We were like, let's just get Thai food. So next week.
That's the best story. But he had sex before.
Yeah, he had sex before. Yeah. You wouldn't know by his condom choice that he had sex before.
Wow. That's wow. But like a great. Then it ends in Thai food. I mean, honestly, that's the best anyone can hope for.
So that's not really the story of how I first started having sex.
Yes, that's the preamble. This is like,
that's the preamble.
Is try one.
Yeah, so I finished using the different sizes because I was like, obviously I have to expedite this process because like, while he's still around and interested, I need to make this happen.
So how long did it take for you to like progress through the rest of it?
Not very long, but I feel like we were seeing each other only every few weeks because he was really busy in college and working. And
23.
Yeah, he lived an hour and a half away, so and I was on call, so I wasn't seeing him very often. But I don't think it took very long. I mean, if you really worked at it, you could probably get through them like in a few days. Not that bad. And I mean, people get to where they are having sex in one night. You know, like going from like nothing to having sex. So I'm sure if you were really dedicated, didn't mind being sore, you could go through them much faster. Sure. But I wasn't that ambitious. Like, I had a few weeks. So,
which is probably the best way to do it, honestly.
Yes. Yeah. Take your time because it's uncomfortable. terrible by any means. So yeah, the next time I saw him, I had completed my different sized diapers.
Here's my diploma.
Here it is. He noticed a difference. He's like, "Wow, you're so much more open this time." And I was like, "I finished all my sizes." And then I started bleeding everywhere.
No.
He was like, "Oh, you're bleeding."
From what? Do you know why you were bleeding?
Like hymen breakage? Yeah,
okay.
because even doing the different sizes, I think that, you know, what it was missing was probably like the in out of sex.
Okay.
And so and still like the biggest size wasn't nearly as big as him. And so that was an issue too.
Do you know if you had a hymen? Or are you just assuming because there was blood?
I'm just assuming because of blood a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, and it was right away too.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, oh, after we'd had sex 5 times, I had a little bleeding.
Mm-hmm.
It was painless, but it was like bleeding down my leg.
Wow.
So
yeah. I mean, and just to say, like, not everyone has a hymen, which is like the bullshit about hymens and the bullshit about virginity being a construct, and also this idea of like that you can know someone's a virgin. Even in your case of like, you know, he was joking, and it could have been you could have been joking too, because some people just have real tight vaginas, real tight pelvic floors, or if you have vaginismus, which can happen, like primary vaginismus can happen like, you know, the first time you have sex and continue, and then also you can get secondary vaginismus. So you could have been having a whole bunch of sex, and then all of a sudden you cannot tolerate any kind of penetration. It's not even tolerate, it's just like, it's just closed for business. Like you just can't get in. And that can happen to anyone, anytime.
it happened to a good friend of mine, and she was Mormon and waited to waited to get married to have sex. And she like texted me on her honeymoon. She's like, "Wow, sex is really hard." And I was like, "Ha ha ha, yeah, have fun." And she texted me later. She's like, "No, I'm serious."
Oh, it's so rough, man.
It was really
it's
rough.
so hard, and it's just it's a real bummer.
She had to do a lot of pelvic floor PT to be able to even have sex. So
it's a real bummer.
Yeah, it was a real bummer. But me having sex
But
was
you had not a bummer.
Had so much fun. We had tons of sex. We had such a great time. So yeah, it was a great, wonderful introduction to sex, and he was the perfect person to first have sex with, and he's still a good friend of mine.
Which is amazing. I mean, this is like the most success story of success stories. I feel like
it is super successful.
It's so successful. And then I guess like with that, the other question I have is, did it like emotionally, did you have any lingering guilt, weird feelings because you had a upbringing that said sex is equal to murder outside of marriage? Like, did any of that play a role in your feelings leading up to or after the event?
That is a very valid question, because I know a lot of people do feel that way. I was fortunate enough that when I started having sex, I had already decided 100% I don't believe in anything about this church. And so, and like I said, I don't have a really guilty conscience. Yeah. And even when I started having oral sex, like, I don't know, it was probably 4 or 5 years earlier, like I didn't feel guilty about that either. I kind of instead of jumping off the cliff of Mormonism, I kind of repelled slowly down.
Which is like also, you know, you slowly dilated your vagina.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like titration, moderation.
Moderation.
You don't have to just like, you can. Some people love to like take a leap and go from there, which I fully endorse. But there's nothing wrong with like, I'm going to extricate myself. And honestly, probably that helped a great deal, right? So you're able...
That's the thing.
Yeah, to like dig yourself out slowly but surely. And then perhaps like you don't have to deal with all those things as they come later on. You're dealing with it in the moment.
Yeah. Because I deconstructed all of the things that I felt weren't really true. And so I really had no belief or attachment to them by the time I left the church. And I had no belief or attachment to the thought that sex is bad, or that I should feel bad for doing it, or that the more people I have sex with, the less valuable I am. Like, I didn't have any feelings like that. And so I think that I told the next person I had sex with that I'd only had sex with one other person. And then after that, I was like, I'm free to go. Nobody has to know this anymore.
Yeah, which is an excellent point. I mean, you really don't have to ever tell anyone how many sexual partners you've had or how many sexual experiences you've had.
No, for me, I just, because I still felt pretty inexperienced, and I'd only had sex with one person, and so I didn't know, like, is there a norm? What do other people like? Like, are other people expecting more from me?
Yeah.
Because, well, I dated that guy for like 6 months probably. We didn't get to see each other very often. It was like maybe every 2 or 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And so I still didn't feel very experienced. And so I just wanted, I guess it was kind of a caveat. Like, I'm not just bad in bed. I just like don't have much experience.
Yeah.
But I didn't even need to tell him because he was like, really? I would have had no idea. Because I think that if you're allowing yourself to just naturally express yourself sexually, I think that every person has that, or most people have that sexual side where they have something to express. And if you're just feeling free to do that, then I don't think anybody would really notice. They just think like, this is what feels good to her. These are her preferences. And so after that, I just realized like, oh, like if I want something, I can just do it or ask for it. And it's not a thing of experience. It's just a thing of like, I'm in touch enough with being a sexual person and like having sexual desires that just comes out naturally.
Yeah. Yeah, which I think is a great point about sex in general. Like, we do tend to think that there's a certain performance that needs to happen. Maybe perhaps we think there is a sexual gradient that happens as we age. Or like all these expectations we have. And especially because, one, in general, the United States is real shit with the sex ed. Yeah. And then doubly, triply so if you were raised religiously.
I was not allowed to go to sex ed.
Yeah. I don't even remember having it.
Yeah,
honestly, at all. Again, it's a wonder I got here. But, there's all these ideas of what it should be. And really what it comes down to is sex is whatever you make it. There's really no wrong way to do it. As long as everyone's consenting and agreeable about it. There's lots of ways that people do it that are very similar. But, sexual scripts and just this idea of performance sex, which can also be super fun. But, being in touch with your body is the primary way to do it.
Yeah, to like be embodied, to like really be in the present moment, like enjoying how it feels. Like that's the whole point.
Exactly. So with that, I'm wondering, do you have advice for people who are perhaps like at any age, right? And they're approaching their sexual debut, or they're excited about it, or maybe they're terrified of it. So, people who are perhaps a little bit older, or like exiting a religious background, or just something, coming from a place of similar to where you were at. But what would be your advice to people like for their first sexual debut?
Definitely, I recommend the dilators. I think those are great because it really does make the first time you have sex, it makes it like painless. And I just heard so many stories about how uncomfortable it was and what a bad experience it ended up being. But I think that those are really great. And I would just say, like, I was very anxious to have sex. And I feel because of that, and because I wasn't at an age where, like maybe like drinking to intoxication was popular, that I never really had any negative sexual experiences. They were all consensual. I wanted to have sex before we had sex. It wasn't like somebody was pushing themselves on me, but that I think makes a really big impact on how I feel about sex, is that I've always felt like it was very consensual. Like, before, during, and after, it was always very consensual. So I would probably, I don't know, like, I think that this is, everybody just kind of has to do what works for them. I would say it's probably a good idea to make sure that, like, you're in a safe place if you're a teenager. Like, I think a lot of times, like, people are taken advantage of because, kids, they don't have any moderation at that point. A lot of people, I'm not saying that all kids are like this or all teenagers are like that, but I think that really contributed to me having positive experiences. Just that I was never in a position where it would be easy to take advantage of me. And, it's made a really big impact. And then as far as leaving a religion, I knew more than I ever believed that the religion was true when I started having sex, that the religion was false and everything about it was false. And I believed that more than I'd ever believed it was true. And so I had no guilt about it. I didn't have any hangups. I didn't feel like, oh, like, what if this is wrong? What if I actually am going to hell because of this? What if I'm going to get struck by lightning? Like, I just, at that point, I didn't care. So I feel like if you need to test the water, like, test the water. That's kind of what I did. It was like, like oral sex, just, found somebody that I was comfortable with, somebody that I actually knew from church, but he was, like more comfortable than like all my other Mormon boyfriends were with the sexual stuff, where they were like, "Ew, I'm only going to come on you through your pants." I feel like just pacing myself, making sure that I felt comfortable with each step instead of just like, okay, maybe I'm going to go from only having French kissed somebody to like full blown having sex.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why not try having somebody feel you up first and
Yeah.
then like maybe have somebody like finger you or like go down on you or something, you know, just like experiment. But I would just say that the most important thing is to not do more than what you're comfortable with at the time. And, you know, if it all seems foreign, which it totally did to me, you know, it's just step by step. Like, you get more comfortable with it because sex is supposed to be fun. Like, you shouldn't feel terrified.
Right. And that is the truth. You shouldn't be terrified. You shouldn't be in undue pain that you're not asking for. You know, there might be some discomfort, but there's lots of things you can do to mitigate that. But I think we are taught that it's supposed to be painful the first time. You know, you're even like as a woman, I think there's a socialization that says like, you know, people are socialized as women says like, you're supposed to not want it. You're supposed to do this thing where it's like, I don't want it, but I do want it, which leads to all kinds of confusion and, you know, this idea of enthusiastic yes, right, when it comes to consent. But if you're socialized again your whole life where it's like, it's a thing you're not supposed to want. It's a really great thing. Like, sex is great and you're supposed to do it at a certain age.
Right.
But also you're not supposed to like overtly look like you want it. That makes things really confusing. Like, I remember for me having my sexual debut, one of the things that like pushed me over, I was 18 and I think my mom told me my whole life was like, don't have sex before you're married. She was against my high school boyfriend. Like, she was just like, you shouldn't, she explicitly said, don't have sex with him. And I was like, yeah. And so I'm going to do it. And we were like, but we were together for a period of time and we were like fooling around doing all these other things. But she said, don't have sex with him. And she also, at a certain point, we were having a conversation. I can't remember where it came from, but he was a little bit older. We were both in high school together, and then we started dating after he graduated. So he was in college, and I was still in high school. And I was all like, ooh, statutory rape, because I'm a real weird child. And
it's very dark mind.
It's real dark. But at some point, we had a conversation where she was like, well, and I think she meant adults. She's like, well, it'd be really weird if there was like a couple that wasn't having sex and they'd been together for like longer than a few months. She's like, that would be really strange. And I was like, I'm going to take that as permission to do this, because it was still like very complicated. This feeling of like, virginity is something I'm supposed to hold on to. I don't know if I really care about it, but also it's like a thing that feels like it has something precious about it. Should I auction it off? I didn't really have that option, but it was something that crossed my mind. But also being like, fuck this, I want to do the things with my body I want to do. But that part of that conversation, just like at a certain point, if you're not having sex together and you're in a romantic relationship, that, you know, again, there's lots of different degrees of sexual interest, right? So people can be asexual and still have romantic relationships. But that was definitely something that tipped me over the edge. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And, you know, I felt like I wanted to do it. I wanted to see what it was like. I remember, so the way that it went down for me was in the back seat of a red neon car.
Oh my gosh, this is classic.
Classic. Wow. In an apartment complex that I did not live in. Neither did my boyfriend. But we would go there all the time and hook up, like in his car, in the back seat. Because it was like, his theory was, people park their cars here, and no one's going to find it weird that there's a random parked car here, which I don't think that was a great theory, but it worked.
It was like a high school dude theory.
No one ever bothered us. And I had this idea, like, I really want to be on top. Like, that's my goal. Like, when I have sex for the first time, I want to be on top. And then he talked me out of it because he's like, well, I heard it can be really painful, and that might make it more painful. And so I didn't get to have that, and I'm still like, you know, I think I feel fine about it now, honestly. But I was like, that was something that was what I wanted, didn't get. And I think it was somewhat uncomfortable, but it wasn't like, I don't remember it being very exciting. It was just like, and now I've done it. I've got a penis in my vagina. Hooray! And it was fine. But what I love the most about that story is like, I had under the circumstances, I'm like, we're going to do it in a car. We're going to do it in an apartment complex. And it's going to be like, and then I think it was like after a high school play, It was like we'd gone out to eat at like Buffalo Wild Wings, and I got chicken wings to go because I was like, after we have sex after this, I'm gonna eat these chicken wings. And
They're gonna be
chicken
cold
wings,
and greasy.
and I was totally happy about it. Did it, and then we went and picked my brother up from somewhere and went back to my house. And that was my story. And then I eventually told my mother, and she didn't talk to me for like 3 days. Because I said I want to go on the pill, and she's like, "Why do you want to go on the pill?" Because I had sex, and then she just didn't. She like stopped talking to me for a few days. So that was, and I continue to torment her to this day. No, she loves me. But
it's a tricky relationship.
It's a tricky. There's all kinds of things I bring up that just make her squirm.
Well, cringy.
But she loves it. She brought this upon herself.
She created you.
Yeah,
she created you. I can't believe we did forget to talk about one very important thing, which is masturbation, or just figuring out what you like. And I think that like women need to know to not be afraid that if they need to stimulate their clitoris during sex, that they should. I mean, this is for newbies. I feel like most people who've been having sex for a while know this, but I mean, at first when I was having sex, I felt like it was so. Like, just the sensation was so, like, overwhelming for me. And I was just like, whoa, like, this is about all I can handle right now. Because, I mean, I was getting used to a really large penis, which can take a while. Yeah, and I was only seeing it, like, every 2 or 3 weeks. Yeah. No. I was like, I've won the sexual Olympics. Like, I'm having sex with a 23-year-old, like, hot man who kind of looks like Lenny Kravitz with a giant dick. And so I was just like, wow, things are only going to go downhill from here. But they didn't. They didn't. Things have gotten really great. Yeah, things have picked up. And I think that you know, I didn't really learn how to have an orgasm with penetration until I was I don't really remember with my second partner. I don't actually remember.
Yeah.
But definitely with my boyfriend after that. I was with him for a long time. And the longer we were together, like the better my orgasms got, even though he's a piece of shit. But, like, my orgasms were still, they were still getting better and better. And I mean, I do clitoral stimulation on myself when we're having sex, when I'm having sex with anyone. And somebody interestingly asked me, he was like, afterwards, he was like, was I not doing it right? Like, is that what you're doing? I was like, I mean, you're not stimulating my clitoris, and like that needs to happen if
you're not doing it, period. But
yeah, which I thought was kind of interesting. I was like, oh, is that a weird thing for women to do that themselves? But I was just like, I don't really care because it works for me and it gives me a great orgasm. Yeah. And I'm probably like, I've never even come close to just having an orgasm from penetration. So don't be embarrassed.
Yeah. I mean, I think that also speaks to a lot of the anxieties that men are socialized to have, like that they should just like, what they're doing with their penis should be enough.
Right.
But no, touch your clit. If you like touching your clit, touch your clit. Also, I think it plays into these like stigmatization of sex toys, like using sex toys with partnered sex. So use a vibrator. There's like a Dan Savage quote that I'm gonna paraphrase it, but basically he says in like praise of like masturbating before you have sex and just masturbating, you know, throughout your life, but understanding what you like so you can tell your partner. And he'll say, like, if men needed, like, a canoe and a goat in the room to come, they would have it. They would have it there first time. They'd have no shame about it. But whereas women are, like, again, people socialized, they're just like, I don't want to, like, do something to make him uncomfortable, even though, like, feels good to me. And that is just, you know, if your partner feels a way about it, have a conversation. Tell them it's fine. There's another Dan Savage quote about like if you use sex toys, it's like you're using tools to have the result you want being an orgasm. If you build a house and you use a hammer, no one says you didn't build the house yourself because you used a hammer. Like you're just using a tool to get to a goal,
right? Or
to get to whatever that goal may be, but even if it's just feeling better. So yeah, masturbate. I didn't actually masturbate until after I'd penetrative sex for the first time.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and we'd done a lot of hand stuff, and I was like, that felt really great. So I felt like I had some ideas of things, but for whatever reason, masturbation didn't click for me until after I'd penetrative sex.
Oh, interesting.
Weird. Yeah.
You know what? Your journey's your journey.
It's so unique.
Yeah. Your journey's however whatever order you decide to do it in. Yeah. I think that they all go hand in hand. They all help each other.
Yeah. All right, so the last thing before we wrap up, I want to see, I did ask people if they had questions for us on Instagram.
Oh my gosh.
And I don't think anyone had questions, so guys, we are free to go.
Well, I feel like we answered all of them anyway.
I think we really got into it. We really, really got into it. thank you so much for sharing your story
Hey,
with us and
I'm
for being
so happy.
on this crazy first episode of the Clam Jam that I think you'll be able to see. I don't know.
Mercury retrograde, who knows?
But we have some idea of how things go. Yeah, we were going to do this all remote, and then, because going forward, this will be a Talking Heads kind of podcast interview series. But
Today?
Karly was like, I'm coming over.
Yeah. It was a
Which is
mistake.
great.
I mean, if I had known better, I would have prepared better.
It's all good. It's all perfect. Mercury retrograde. You're my favorite person. So
I love
it's
seeing Deanna in person anyway,
lovely.
so
I
this
love
is great.
this very much. Yeah, I think that's all the things. Karly is an incredible midwife and all-around vaginal health provider. I love to refer people to her constantly as much as I can. Like, oh, did you have like you need some additional help like with your hormones or questions about your vagina in a more like lab-based way with a bunch of more information? Go to Karly.
I'm here for you.
Thyroids. Yeah. She also works remotely, so wherever you are in the world, you can reach out to her. She does catch babies, but she's retiring from that game, guys, so you've missed it. You've missed. I've got to see her in action, and she was incredible, an incredible midwife, and maybe I'll drag her out of retirement if I ever have a baby. But
for now, I'm a tired midwife.
Yeah.
Tired and retired.
Tired and retired. Do you want to share the places that people can find you?
Sure, you can find me on my website, which is karlynuttall.com. My name is spelled KarlyNuttall. I have to do that, otherwise it's very confusing. I'm so sorry. And then on my Instagram, which is Karly Nuttall Midwife, and I think that on the Birth Queens podcast as well. Yeah.
Birth Queens. It's a great podcast. Jesus. Birth Queens. So especially if you are thinking about having a baby or have had a baby or want to know more about having babies, it's just incredible.
I mean, not to toot my own horn, but we cover some really good
All kinds of
basics
things,
that
yeah.
everybody should know. Especially the earlier episodes, like the first 6, I think, like should get you like fully informed on like, you know, what you should be deciding or like what factors you should consider when you're deciding where you give birth and who you give birth with and all that.
Yeah. So I highly recommend it. I'm on an episode in there.
Yes,
somewhere in the very beginning. So very exciting. Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. I'm so excited for the Clam Jam to continue to be a thing. I'd love your feedback. Again, hoping everyone can see this in the future. But this has been so fun. Thank you so much, Karly.
Thank you for letting me come on and overshare.
This is the best overshare ever. There's no such thing as TMI. We say that all the time here at the Consultancy.
I say that all the time.
I probably borrowed it from you. I don't know.
Maybe.
I didn't come up with that.
I get so many texts where people are like, this might be TMI. I'm like, your midwife, stop right there.
Thing. Tell me
Yeah,
all the things.
there's no such thing. There's no such thing.
Absolutely.
Even with my friends, even with my parents now, I'm like, tell me how your prostate surgery went down.
Yeah, like I'm also in a similar place. My mom is more on board with it, and my dad every once in a while will throw something in there. It's very fun.
Yeah.
It's a good time.
I just like making my parents squirm because
Yes, as much as possible. They brought it upon themselves.
they created us.
They did. All right, well, we're gonna wrap that up. And feel free to reach out if you have ideas for guests or topics you'd like us to cover in the future. You know where to find me. Have a lovely night.